Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu-Yuot. It's Wednesday, March 30th. This is Africa 54.
Singapore's Prime Minister assures President Joe Biden that his country stands with Kyiv as the conflict with Russia rages on. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff vows that the perpetrators of a deadly attack on a passenger train will be punished. And are you confused by new tech buzzwords? A Nigerian tech entrepreneur will explain.
As the war in Ukraine grinds into its second month, the United Nations on Wednesday named an independent panel of 3 human rights experts to conduct an investigation into possible war crimes and other violations committed during the conflict, according to Reuters. The regional Donetsk governor says Russian forces are shelling nearly all cities along the front line, separating Ukrainian government-controlled territory from areas held by Russian-backed separatists in the eastern Donetsk region. The devastated town of Irpin, recaptured by the Ukrainian military, according to the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, and Irpin's mayor near Kyiv, is a wasteland of burnt-out homes on Wednesday. The town is a symbol of the horrors of the fighting and the bombardment there. Bodies of dead civilians are scattered on the streets. Russia's invasion has been halted on most fronts by stiff resistance from Ukrainian forces, who have recaptured territory even as civilians are trapped in besieged cities. British military intelligence says Russian units suffering heavy losses are being forced to return to Belarus and Russia to reorganize and resupply. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Ministry says the foreign ministers of Russia and China met in China Wednesday to discuss the war, and both condemned what they regard as illegal and counterproductive Western sanctions imposed on Moscow. The United Nations World Food Programme is providing emergency food assistance to 1 million people in Ukraine. The WFP has provided 330,000 loaves of freshly baked bread to families in the city of Kyiv, cash assistance to displaced people in Lviv, and ready-to-eat food in other parts of the country. The WFP says over 6.5 million people are displaced inside Ukraine, and the pre-conflict supply chain systems for feeding the country's population are breaking down, with food being among the top 3 concerns for people inside Ukraine, along with safety and fuel for transportation. The WFP estimates that 45% of the population are worried about finding enough to eat. Close to 4 million people, mainly women and children, have fled the conflict and become refugees in neighboring countries, according to the WFP. The World Food Programme says it requires $590 million to assist 3.1 million crisis-affected people on the move inside Ukraine with cash distributions, as well as refugees and asylum seekers from Ukraine in neighboring countries for the next 3 months. A free and prosperous Indo-Pacific is more important than ever, President Joe Biden said while meeting with his Singaporean counterpart against the backdrop of a raging conflict in Ukraine. Biden has painted the war as a global struggle between liberal democracy and autocracy. Singapore's leader says this is a battle for a rules-based global order. VOA's Anita Powell reports from the White House.
The tiny nation of Singapore is more than 8,000 kilometers from Kyiv, but the events there loom large for the Indo-Pacific, said Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong during his first White House visit with Biden on Tuesday. Lee reiterated his nation's strong support of Kyiv because, he said, what happens in Europe reverberates around the world.
The war in the Ukraine has implications for the Asia-Pacific. There are potential flashpoints and contentious issues in our region too, which, if not managed well, could escalate to open conflict. Countries with interests in the region need to pursue all efforts to settle disagreements through peaceful means so that we can avoid reaching a point of no return.
Biden, who spent much of the last week in Europe shoring up those alliances, underscored the importance of global unity against Russian aggression.
Putin's war is unacceptable to nations in every region of the world, not just Europe, but in every region of the world. It's an attack on the core international principles that underpin peace and security and prosperity everywhere, including in the Indo-Pacific. Today, Singapore and the United States are united and sending the message to all nations, regardless of their size or population. They are equal in their rights on the global stage. They have a right to sovereignty and territorial integrity and to determine their own future, free from violence and intimidation.
Lee is the first leader from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to visit the White House during the Biden administration. On Monday, he met with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Analyst Zach Cooper said Singapore, which has just 5 million people but is a major economic force in Southeast Asia, is sure to appreciate this high level of engagement from the world's largest economy.
I think for Singapore, this is an important show that it's going to stand up for the rules of the existing international order, and being able to come to the White House and be rewarded for that is an important signal that the United States appreciates what Singapore's done in the last few weeks. And I think what we're going to hear over the next few months is a real desire from Singapore for the United States to take more of a leadership role economically. And I'm sure they will have passed that along in this White House visit.
And regional experts say this small nation has a lot to offer the U.S.
Last year alone, Singapore was America's 18th largest trade partner in the world and is also a free trade partner. And I think probably a couple of points that'll be really part of the dialogue here is that, when we talk about, and even before the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the importance of the Biden administration was really placing on trying to strengthen the resilience of America's global supply chains. Singapore, in a number of key areas like energy and technology, is one of a major trading and distribution hubs for the Indo-Pacific region.
And Biden said this warm friendship will soon expand as the U.S. hopes to host more ASEAN leaders for a summit in coming months. Anita Powell, VOA News, the White House.
Thank you.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is seeking to reassure Israel and Gulf state leaders that reviving the 2015 Iran nuclear deal is the best way to make sure Tehran never gets a nuclear weapon. After leaving Israel, Blinken visited Morocco. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken laid out his reasons for visiting the Middle East and North Africa, even as the U.S. is focused on Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
This is a part of the world where the United States has vital interests and some of our closest friends. The United States will continue to invest in the region, strengthening the relationships that are central to stability in the Middle East and North Africa, making progress on enduring challenges, broadening opportunities for our people, and at the same time, staying focused on ending the Kremlin's war of aggression.
Blinken visited Morocco on Tuesday, where he also met with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. One expert told VOA that the North Africa region will be particularly vulnerable to the economic fallout from the Russian invasion.
I think in part because North Africa will be the location that is already feeling a lot of the pressure economically and socially from some of the food and energy price increases. And if you recall, it was a little over a decade ago that there were popular uprisings that led to revolutions and unrest that in part were linked to also increases in commodity prices at the time. So I think this is an ounce of diplomatic prevention to try to coordinate and see if we could offer some support.
On his first stop, Israel, Blinken sought to reassure allies in the region that the U.S. is committed to not allowing Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon.
The United States believes that a return to full implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is the best way to put Iran's nuclear program back in the box that it was in, but has escaped from since the United States withdrew from that agreement.
The Biden administration has been working to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which placed curbs on Tehran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Former President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the deal in 2018. Experts say one remaining unresolved issue is that Iran wants its paramilitary Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps removed from the U.S. list of foreign terrorist organizations. Israel and most Republican lawmakers oppose such a step, as one expert explains.
Given that the Biden administration is selling this as a nuclear-only deal and is not restricting Iran's terrorism apparatus, ballistic missile, cruise missile, drone capabilities, or the rest of its asymmetric military capabilities and other threats to U.S. partners and U.S. security in the region, it makes no sense to offer non-nuclear sanctions relief, be it under the terrorism rubric or the ballistic missile rubric. But that unfortunately seems to be the path-dependent course the administration is on.
Iran says an agreement to revive the nuclear deal is imminent, but U.S. officials have been more cautious, saying thorny issues remain. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Thousands of people have been driven from their homes in the Democratic Republic of Congo after the M23 rebel group attacked army positions near the border with Uganda and Rwanda. Uganda Red Cross says that some 6,000 refugees had crossed into Uganda from 6 villages near the border. Congo's army confirmed the attacks and says the M23 is backed by Rwandan soldiers, 2 of whom it claimed to have captured. United Nations investigators had previously accused Rwanda and Uganda of supporting the group, which both countries have denied. Nigerians are mourning the dead relatives as others wait to learn the fate of their missing loved ones following an attack on a passenger train in the country's northwest. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff vows that the perpetrators of Monday evening's attack will be punished. Rachel Judah has more.
Bullet holes riddled this passenger train on the line between Nigeria's capital Abuja and the northern city Kaduna. At least 7 people were killed and several are missing after an attack on Monday night. No group has claimed responsibility. The incident underscores growing insecurity in Africa's most populous country. Gideon Gambo was at the scene on Tuesday. He said he's yet to receive any information on his 2 brothers who were on the train.
We're making calls back and front, you know, and well, the information reaching me right now that there's every possibility that some people were kidnapped and all that, yeah, and some people were shot.
Some people have opted to travel by rail after several kidnappings on Nigerian highways. But Monday's assault was the second on a train since October. Such attacks are normally attributed to bandits, a loose term for gangs of gunmen that roam northwest Nigeria and have abducted hundreds of schoolchildren and villagers for ransom. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Irabor.
This is dastardly act, but I'd like to assure you that those behind it will not go unpunished. Currently, the men are on their chase, and they will certainly pay the price.
The train was stopped around 15 miles outside Kaduna, a Nigerian Railway Corporation official said. Most people were taken to safety by Tuesday morning, but an unknown number were missing, Kaduna's internal security ministry said. Several were being treated at a nearby hospital. Security experts say Nigeria can ill afford more instability. The country is already struggling to contain insurgencies in the northeast, conflict in central states, and militant groups in the Niger Delta to the southeast.
Rachel Judah of Reuters filed that report. Now, for more on the Nigeria train attack, I'm joined live from Abuja by reporter Medina Dauda. Medina, what's the latest?
I'm joined live from Abuja by reporter Medina Dauda.
Esther, the latest is that the Kaduna State government says it has received a manifest from the Nigeria Railway Corporation with the detailed passengers that were on board the Abuja-Kaduna train service AK9, which was attacked. This was contained in a statement issued by the Commissioner for Internal Affairs, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Aruan. According to the documents received, it said there were 398 passengers who bought tickets for the trip, but 362 were validated as having boarded the train through the recognized turnstile. It also said the passenger manifest did not include the Nigerian corporate and security officials who were on board the train. The statement also said that security agencies have reported that 8 bodies were recovered and 26 persons were injured during the attack.
Medina,
the statement said investigations are still going on to ascertain the status of the passengers who were aboard the train and those who remain unaccounted for at the time of the update.
Medina, when you speak to relatives of some of those missing, what are they telling you?
Some of the relatives we spoke with are really complaining that they have not been able to reach their loved ones who were on board the train from Abuja to Kaduna. Some who were able to speak to some other people were as it is now, a lot of relatives are angry and sad that they've not been able to communicate with their loved ones who were on board the train.
Right, Medina, thank you so much. Medina Dauda is an Abuja-based reporter. A new front in Ethiopia's war in the Afar region is jeopardizing efforts to get the feuding sides together for peace talks, according to 3 regional officials and 3 diplomats. A ceasefire declared last week may have been breached in some places. The flare-up of violence in Afar this year came after fighting in the neighboring regions of Tigray and Amhara had ground to a stalemate. The TPLF and Afar forces dispute who started the most recent fighting in the northeastern region, which erupted in mid-January. The regional government estimates 300,000 people have had to abandon their homes. The TPLF says they were responding to attacks on Tigray by Afar forces and allies, while Afar officials say Tigrayan forces were the aggressors.
The humanitarian situation is very severe. Most of mothers, children, disabled people are now mostly suffering. So we need for these communities, for the displaced communities, food, emergency shelter, as well as NFI, and health and nutrition, protection, as well as water and sanitation facilities.
Now we are running out of resources like consumable medications, emergency drugs. We are running out of it currently. We are trying to get it from Addis, from other places, by purchasing or by donations. We are trying to get it. But if fighting continue like that, we may face challenge. We may face challenge.
Ethiopia has released several former government officials from prison, according to a lawyer working with them. The group of ethnic Tigrayans included former members of the government-appointed administration and a member of the ruling party. The lawyer and a second source said at the time 12 Tigrayan officials and an activist and another man had been arrested in raids on March 7th and 8th, bringing the total number of those arrested to 14. An Ethiopian court ordered the release of a freelance video journalist accredited to the Associated Press to be freed on bail after being held without a charge since late November. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Still to come, a Nigerian entrepreneur explains the tech buzzwords. But first, Hedy Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
How worried should the world be about the Wagner mercenary group? Join me, Haydee Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa as we'll explore Russia's rising influence in the Sahel region. We'll also talk to the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire about his plans to keep the peace and create jobs in his country. Plus, we'll introduce you to the new president of the U.S. African Development Foundation. All this and more on the next Straight Talk Africa.
The security situation in Somalia remains volatile. Less than a week ago, 2 blasts killed more than 40 people, including a female member of parliament. The al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab says it was behind the bombings. In a recent interview with VOA, the U.S. ambassador to Somalia, Larry Andre, talked about how the U.S. government is helping the Somali government fight against Al-Shabaab.
We are involved in several different ways. One is through training the American people through the Department of State and through the Department of Defense have very experienced and highly capable contract trainers. Also direct training my members of our military so that the Danab unit of the Somali National Army is able to be as effective as they are against those who wish to cause harm to Somali people. We also work with other cooperation with other parts of the Somali National Army, with the Somali National Police, working with the judiciary, prosecutors. So it's not purely a military effort. We are looking at all of the aspects of Somali government, Somali authorities that can be reinforced to bring greater protection and greater justice to the Somali people at both the federal and state levels.
That was Larry Andre, the U.S. ambassador to Somalia. These are the new buzzwords for people who follow tech trends: AI, non-fungible tokens or NFTs, Web3, 5G, the Internet of Things, blockchain, tech, and metaverse. To learn more about these terms, our technology correspondent Paul Ndiho spoke to Mojisola Alabi, a tech entrepreneur and analyst based in Lagos, Nigeria.
Welcome back to Africa 54.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope you've been doing great.
You're sort of the eyes, ears on the ground when it comes to anything tech in Nigeria. You keep up with what's trending. Bring me up to speed. How are people using emerging technologies in Nigeria?
I would like to extend it further to Africa, but also Nigeria, definitely, because Africa is actually doing great things. COVID came, we all thought, oh my goodness, what is this? We thought it's going to stop, as in put a stop to so many things. But guess what? It has actually propelled so many organizations, even individuals, to absorb and integrate mobile technology or internet technology or emerging technology into their everyday lives, into their businesses, into their transactions. And we've seen the likes of mobile technology doing so much as well. All those countries, especially those countries that have immersed themselves in the use of digital economy, has given Africa the opportunity to, to position itself as a digitally focused continent. These countries have actually pushed Africa to the forefront and made the global space to say, okay, let's pay attention. Africa is doing something. And from different areas, different sectors, different space, it has pushed the continent to be there.
A lot of people talk about this emerging internet economy. What does it mean when somebody says there is a boom in the internet economy?
The economy, the internet technology has brought to the forefront of the general economy, contributing to the general economy. Before, it used to be buy and sell at the market or market days, but now through your laptop with internet technology, you can buy and sell. If you have a freezer or fridge to sell, you can just snap it and just sell, and that's it. And a lot of young guys, young innovators are coming up with different solutions that Africans can use to make lives better. These technologies has pushed people to be mobile first, technology first, in order to be able to integrate these innovations into their everyday lives, into their businesses, so that it won't put a stop. Because that's the beauty of technology. It can't stop, even if you're trying to stop it. If you're trying to stop it, you're going to see another new way it can actually solve problems. And it's because this technology is solving problems, it has created an economy itself. We now have even the traditional sectors relying on internet technology to survive in this current climate trend. So internet technology is what I can say, another type of economy that is pushing the general economy forward for each country in the continent to make more money.
Nigeria banned cryptocurrencies, so they came up with their own version called the e-Naira, but largely they banned maybe the other cryptocurrencies that were already being used by a lot of Nigerians. So how has that impacted those businesses?
Banning the cryptocurrency in Nigeria has not actually stopped innovation or technology evolution in the finance payment sector. It has not really stopped it. Even though the e-Naira is there, you have to create an e-Naira wallet, pay into it, then you transact with it. That's how it's working. Though the adoption is still slow, like every other new technology, everybody is still skeptical. Businesses are opening more to it now than when it was first introduced. Though a lot of Nigerians actually have a separate cryptocurrency wallet, though they can't, still make use of those major transactions with cryptocurrencies. Maybe crypto to cryptocurrency transactions are not still taking place. But with blockchain technology, they've been able to a little bit bypass those restrictions, in making use of those cryptocurrencies to make transactions, because whether you like it or not, very soon, like I mentioned earlier, you will actually be spending real money, but you are not touching it. Generally, the Nigerian finance sector is still thriving, even though the e-Naira or the cryptocurrency ban is still there.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Africa 54 tech correspondent Paul Diho spoke to Mojisola Alabi, a tech entrepreneur based in Lagos, Nigeria. And that's our show for today from all of us here in Washington. Thanks for watching.